Welcome to Truth Talk Live.
All right, let's talk.
The truth is, I can't hide it, I can't hold it no more.
A daily program powered by the Truth Network,
This is kind of a great thing, and I'll tell you why.
where pop culture, current events, and theology all come together.
Speak
Your mind.
And now, here's today's Truth Talk Live host.
Welcome to Truth Talk Live. This is Peter Rosenberger. Glad that you are with us on this Wednesday before Thanksgiving. If you are driving, please keep your eyes on the road and both hands on the wheel. It's going to be crazy out there. And if you're traveling, this is the busiest travel week of the year. And please use patience, get there early at the airport, and recognize that it may be a little nuts. And if you're listening while traveling to this program, and if you're on the road and you want somebody to keep you company, that's what we're here for. 866-348-7884. 866-348-7884. All right, couple things we want to go over. Favorite kind of dressing. Now, do you have certain things that must be a part of your dressing? Is it cornbread or is it bread? Do you put olives in it? Do you what are you doing for the dressing that you have? And I'd like to hear that because I've grown up with different kinds of dressing. We had it the way we did it growing up, and then when I got married, and my wife's grandmother, and I'll talk about her later on in the program, made some of the best dressing I ever had. But it was better than anything I ever had. But it made my stuff look like stovetop, which is not bad. By the way, stovetop is not bad, but there are people that really go elaborately all out for dressing. And what are some of the, all right, here's another thing. Real cranberry sauce or ocean spray out of the can or generic out of the can. Real cranberry sauce or ocean spray out of the can. These are the things that can split families apart. And we're all about unity here. We're all about keeping families together. So I want to see what kind of cranberry sauce that you like to have. And do you fry your turkey? Do you roast it? What are some things that are important to you for Thanksgiving? I got one brother that is insistent on LeSueur peas for Thanksgiving. LeSueur peas. That he's insistent on it. And then I've got others that want green bean casserole. And so just there's a eclectic thing, pecan pie or pumpkin pie. And I got to admit, I'm going to probably have both. I've been on a weight loss program this year, and I'm going to shelve that for the next 72 hours, if that's all right with you all. And I think I have a dispensation for that, if I may use that word as a Presbyterian. But I think that it's going to be too hard to stay on it. So I'm looking forward to the meal and the time with friends. And I won't have any of my family here with me this time, but we'll be with several friends. Normally we get together with a big group of us, but it's going to be kind of a smaller group this year. I have a large family. So I'd like to hear your thoughts. 866-348-7884. Are you concerned about arguments at Thanksgiving time over politics? There's been a lot of chatter about that, of blue-haired college students coming home for Thanksgiving, and are you going to welcome them home with the Trump dance? I mean, there's so much out there of conversations about it. Some of it funny, some of it is a little bit ominous. And are you concerned that there's going to be some type of altercation or argument at Thanksgiving? Are you doing anything to maybe avoid that? Are you planning on going full tilt and just, welcome them to wear a MAGA hat or something, or wearing a I'm with her. Wait, what was Kamala's slogan? Joe was Build Back Better. Hillary was I'm with her. I don't remember what Kamala's thing was, but anyway. So it can be a tense time for some. I hope it won't be for you. I hope it'll be a very meaningful time because we have a lot to be thankful for in this country. I will do this in honor of Robbie Dillmore, who you all know and love if you're regular listeners to this network. And Robbie tells what must be considered the lamest jokes of all times. And I'm doing this just for Robbie, But I heard this great joke, and I'll probably share it tomorrow at Thanksgiving, so don't give it away. But this frog, he went into the bank for a loan, and he was telling the lady there, the bank officer, her name was Mrs. Whack, and he said, I'd like a loan. She said, well, you're a frog. He said, I know that. But she said, well, I don't know if we give loans to frogs. And her first name was Polly. And he said, Miss Whack, I need a loan. And she said, well, do you have any collateral? She said, I sure do. And he pulled out this little tiny trinket, this little pink elephant. And he gave that to her. That's my collateral. And she said, well, I don't know if this is good enough. He said, well, why don't you go talk to the bank manager and, help me out. I need a loan, Miss Whack. I need a loan. And so she went to the bank manager. She said, I got a frog out here who wants a loan. And he said, well, does he have any collateral? She said, yeah, he's got this. And she held that little pink elephant, a little tiny thing that fit between her fingers there. And he looked at her and said, that's a knick-knack, Pollywhack. Give that frog a loan. Sorry. I'm sorry. That's a Robbie Dilmore joke. And when I heard it, I thought, well, I better share it before he does, because I know he will jump on that one. He'll be on that like a pack of dogs on a three-legged cat. So anyway, that's a knick-knack, Pollywhack. Give that frog a loan. We've got a lot to cover here today, and I want to hear from you on what you're looking forward to, what you're not. But ultimately, as believers, we have so much to be thankful for. Cicero said that gratitude is the virtue from which all others spring. Is our heart filled with gratitude in the midst of a lot of the craziness? If nothing else, we can be grateful that the election season is over. How about that? We'll start with that. There may be some ceasefire things going on in some of these hot spots in the country, and hopefully we can usher back more peaceful times. But we do have a great deal to be grateful for, and let's just join together on that. It's going to be a great day. And I am, again, thrilled to have you with us. 866-348-7884, 866-34-TRUTH if you want to be a part of the program. That's a knick-knack, Pollywhack. Give that frog a loan. All right, I do apologize for that, but I couldn't resist, because this network has been conditioned for decades with Robbie's jokes. I felt like that would be, okay, I'm going to be censored on that one. This is Peter Rosenberger. This is Truth Talk. We got a lot to go, a lot more to go. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
Welcome back to Truth Talk Live. This is Peter Rosenberger. We are so glad that you are with us. 866-34-TRUTH, 866-348-7884. All right, now we're asking about homemade cranberry sauce versus canned. We're asking about what type of dressing recipe. You don't have to share the whole recipe. It may be a family secret. We don't want to cause any problems with that. We're asking about, is there a dish that you feel like you have to have at Thanksgiving, or otherwise it wouldn't be? Have you ever had, by the way, have you ever had Thanksgiving in the hospital? Been there, done that. And we're going to talk about that in the next block. I've got a special story that I want to share with you on that. And I got to tell you this, though. I know a lot of people are kind of worried about it, because it could always go off the rails when people get together, families get together, and there's a lot of unresolved issues, and then people just in general unsettled. I was at the hospital yesterday with my wife getting an MRI, and she has a lot of health challenges. And there was a guy sitting there in the little waiting room. We're waiting there. It was just the three of us, and he was wearing a camo MAGA hat, and Gracie just making conversation. I like your hat. And she's in her wheelchair, and the guy was very pleasant, nice, older fella, and I lapsed into it was just the three of us, and I lapsed into my Trump impression. I was like, yeah. I said, Elon. He said, sir. I said, Elon, you got to call it X. You have the beautiful rockets. They're beautiful rockets. They're so beautiful. They're spectacular. And they come down from space, and your machines hold them like a little baby. And, we're just clowning around. Well, all of a sudden, this guy comes in, an older fella comes in, and starts just ragging on the guy with the MAGA hat. And, really loud, boisterous, visibly upset that this guy is wearing this MAGA hat. And this other fellow was, he served in Vietnam, and he was, trying to be very pleasant with him. He said, I'm just, I'm glad, he wasn't being argumentative or anything. He wasn't being weird. But it was just the other guy just was just angry. Very angry. And nobody invited him into the conversation. It was just the three of us talking. All of a sudden, he just, leaps into the conversation. And then he just kept going. He kept turning around and coming back, and then the technician came in and was talking to my wife. And finally, I had to look at the guy. I said, buddy, put a pin in it. We'll do this another time. You need to go away. We're trying to talk a little bit business here. And he wanted just to keep on. He wanted to get into it with Gracie. And I was just like, what? This guy is unhinged. And he's not well. You don't do that. You may have a difference of opinion on things, but you're in a hospital. And you got an older guy sitting over here talking to a woman in a wheelchair. And I'm filling out a form, and nobody's bothered this guy. He wasn't even in the same room. He came out of the way to insert himself into a conversation that was just a lighthearted conversation. And for a moment, I'm a second-degree black belt, and you've heard of Shogun? Well, I'm Show Nuff. And for a moment there, I thought I was going to have to use some of this on this guy. He was just spitting mad and came out of the blue into this guy. This is a small little waiting room. We were in there by ourselves. Nobody was bothering this guy. And I don't even know where he came from. And he just was very, very upset. And I thought, well, Thanksgiving is going to be a little bit rough for people, I think. And I hope it won't be that way for you. And I hope that we can start building some bridges. I was kind of surprised watching Joe Scarborough and his wife Mika go down to Mar-a-Lago, and they come back, and now their ratings have just plummeted. I think the Hallmark Channel beat them the other day. And, but they've been telling everybody that Trump is Hitler. Then they go down there to meet with Hitler, and I think it sent a mixed signal to all these people who actually believe this. And you have to question the people with the big microphones in the media. They've been saying all these things, and did they really mean it? And if they did mean it, then why are they talking with them? If they didn't mean it, then what is their consequence? What is the outcome of this? And you don't have to like Trump. Trump is not somebody that you're required to like and be friends with. But if you say he's Hitler and then you're willing to sit down and negotiate and work with Hitler, Churchill wouldn't do it. Churchill didn't want to negotiate. By the way, that's a great movie if you ever want to watch it. It's Darkest Hour. So I'm a big Churchill fan, and that's a great movie. It's worth your time. But, our rhetoric can get us into all kinds of stuff. And I've been going through about a 30-part series on Romans. And it was about, and if you go back and look at Romans 14, and this is through Ligonier Ministries. R.C. Sproul was taking about a 30 parts jaunt through this thing. And I had to listen to multiple of these things more than one time, because when it comes to understanding the gospel, I'm in remedial classes. But he talks about in Romans 14, Paul saying, we should be people of peace. Can we be people of peace? Not seeking out conflict. We're not going to get along with everybody. But when all possible, Scripture says, live peacefully with one another. I know everybody's got strong feelings this way or that way. But as Christians, can we avoid getting caught up in that kind of rhetoric so that we are not instigators and caustic people, but rather we are people that are vested in speaking peace to people? Now, you gotta think this older fellow that wanted to get into this big brouhaha with this veteran. You got to think that, man, this guy's got more than one issue going on. And oftentimes people will pin all of their angst on an issue that really has nothing to do with their angst. It has a lot to do with what's going on in their hearts. And they tend to channel that into politics or whatever, and they become visceral. I'll never forget one time my dad took us, I have 4 brothers, and Dad took us to go see a wrestling tournament in our home in South Carolina. And Dad liked to watch the crowds. He didn't care anything about wrestling, but he had 5 boys, and he did do something for us. We were jumping off the top rope and everything else. And Baron von Raschke came out. You remember Baron von Raschke? He's this guy that, played this Nazi guy kind of guy, and he came out and he was bald, and he had this signature move was the claw. And he would put people to sleep with the claw. And I was watching these ladies, and one lady, I'll never forget her. I was just a kid, but she looked like somebody's grandmother, and she was just spitting mad at Baron von Raschke. And I don't think it ever occurred to her that later that night, Baron von Raschke's going to be staying at the Holiday Inn, and the next day he's going to go home and probably mow the grass. He doesn't have a lair. He's got a home. He was from Nebraska. We get caught up in all that kind of craziness, and maybe as Christians, we can help tamp that down a little bit. What do you think? This is Peter Rosenberger. This is Truth Talk Live. This is not Baron von Raschke. 866-348-7884. 866-34-TRUTH. Don't go away. We got more to go. We'll be right back.
Truth Talk Live.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
Welcome back to Truth Talk Live. This is Peter Rosenberger. Glad to have you with us. 866-34-TRUTH. 866-348-7884. As you get ready for Thanksgiving, I want to give you this story. It's out on my podcast, and if you want to check it out, it's at hopeforthecaregiver.com, and go out there and you can see all the things that I have out there. I've got books. And by the way, I do a radio program for caregivers, for those of you who are new to me, and I host this show at least once a week on Wednesdays and sometimes Fridays. But I do a show every week for family caregivers. I've been a caregiver myself for 4 decades. And the holidays can be a bit difficult for caregivers. All right, I get that. And it's incumbent on us as caregivers sometimes to provide all of the meal, the cleanup and everything, and to make it special. And there's that added pressure to make sure we incorporate all the traditions and all the stuff to make it a special day. And if you're feeling a little bit stressed about that right now, I've got a thing at Caregiver 911. It's right on my website on the front page there. You'll see it blinking. And I've got a special episode of my podcast to listen to. I've got a video that I did for you and recommendations of next steps. It's hard to be a caregiver. There's no question about it. And when you're taking care of somebody who has a chronic impairment, I have a piece that'll be on foxnews.com tomorrow morning, on Thanksgiving morning at 10 o'clock. It hits Eastern time. And I hope you'll check it out, because I talk about this very subject and in relation to some of the things I observed with J.D. Vance. A lot of people don't think of this as being a caregiver, but if you are in a relationship with somebody who's an addict or an alcoholic, you're a caregiver. It's just a little bit different as far as maybe taking care of somebody with Alzheimer's or autism or whatever, but the principle still applies. You're still caring for somebody who has a chronic impairment, wherever there's a chronic impairment, whether it be mental illness, physical illness, addiction, trauma, whatever. You always got a caregiver. How do you help those folks? What does that look like? And that's what I do. And the holidays can be difficult. This is November's National Caregiver Awareness Month. And so this is the last Wednesday I'll be on the Truth Network to talk about this, but I wanted to spend just a few moments to recognize that we're going into a very difficult season for many family caregivers. Plus, when you go home, you see family members you haven't seen in a while, and you will notice decline in aging family members. And if you're going to mom and dad's house, whatever, you may notice a lot of things if you hadn't seen them in several months or even longer. And so I want you to be prepared for that and be observant. But Thanksgiving is not the time to start making all those kind of plans. Enjoy the meal, enjoy the day, and then after you get home, let it sit for a little bit and then maybe start addressing some issues. But don't bring it into Thanksgiving dinner. Okay? It's not required. If you didn't get here overnight, you're not going to get out overnight. I mean, that's just the way it works. So enjoy the day, but do make observations on some things. If you got a family member coming to your home that is dealing with disabilities and so forth, make sure your traffic areas are not cluttered with slippery throw rugs or mats and things like that. Gracie uses crutches and she has 2 prosthetic legs, and when she falls, she'll slip on things and so forth. It's just, when you're in a different environment that you don't know, it's important that you make people with disabilities feel welcome. That there's not impediments, that they can get into your home with minimal difficulty. You can't go build a ramp this late at the day, but just make sure there's not a lot of stuff there that's in the way and cluttered. That you have good light bulbs, and those are little things that you can do to nobody wants to go to the emergency room on Thanksgiving Day. I have been to the emergency room on Thanksgiving Day. It's not fun, and you don't want to do that. While I'm on that subject, my wife was hurt 41 years ago this month, and her family lived in Northwest Florida, but she was in Nashville at school, and she got in a car wreck about 90 miles outside of Nashville, and that was the first major center, so they just took her straight back to Nashville. She was driving towards Memphis, and she got hurt, and the family got the call, and they dropped everything and went up there, and they're, right before Thanksgiving. She was hurt on the 18th of November. So this time, 41 years ago, they're gathered around in the hospital, and they get to go see her in the critical care pods, every several hours whenever they have visiting time, and then the rest of the time they just sit around, and it was a horrific time for them. And they had Thanksgiving meal there at the cafeteria at the hospital at St. Thomas in Nashville. And my wife's grandmother is deep roots in East Tennessee, way over there in up in the mountains, way up in Elizabethton. In fact, that was Elizabeth of Elizabethton, Tennessee, was named after her 4th great grandmother, and that was her family. But she didn't know anything about Nashville per se, and so didn't know this hospital, and neither did the family. And so this little tiny families clustered around the table there in the cafeteria at the hospital. And cafeteria food is not known for being spectacular. Well, it's gotten better. Back then, it was not. The nuns ran St. Thomas at the time, and I really don't think they cared a whole lot about flavor and everything else and making good food. It's gotten better, though, over the years. It's much better now, but back then it was not, and it was pretty miserable time. Institutional Thanksgiving dinner. But my wife's grandmother, she pulled out a paper turkey, the kind with crepe paper that you fold out like you had when you were kids, and she put that on the table, and she had little tiny decorations she had in her purse. She was a wonderful woman, and she brought a sense of tradition to the unknown that they were facing. She brought some sense into the senselessness they were dealing with. A floor above them, Gracie was fighting for her life. And she helped bring normal to the abnormal. And they had a Thanksgiving meal. They gave thanks that she was still alive. And she has lived an exceptional life. It has not come easy to her. She has a very hard life, but she's lived an exceptional life. But her grandmother knew the importance of giving thanks, even in a hospital cafeteria on Thanksgiving Day, while a loved one is fighting for their life. Some of you are going home, and you're going to have Thanksgiving for the first time this year with an empty chair. I'm one of those. there's an empty chair for our family, even though I won't be physically with them in South Carolina. My father's not with us. Some of you are going home and you're going to have a loved one that you'll have to help feed. Some of you are going to look across the table at a loved one who doesn't recognize you anymore. These are painful things. These are hard things. But even in those moments, we can give thanks. God has given us something far greater than we can ever imagine that transcends even all of those things. They're not easy. And as believers, this is as close to hell as we're going to have to get in this world. That's what this is. This world and all its travails, everything else, as believers, this is as close to hell as we'll ever get. But the truth, the sad truth, the hard truth is for non-believers, this broken, fallen world is as close to heaven as they're going to get. So if you're going home and you're fighting circumstances less than ideal, remember my wife's grandmother. Her name was Mary Emma Parker. And she did something extraordinary for her family in the midst of a great sorrow and a great distress. She put a little paper turkey on the Thanksgiving table there in the cafeteria in the hospital. And she helped lead her family. My wife's grandfather had died many years prior, and she was the matriarch, and she helped lead them. She was a very quiet, humble woman. But she helped lead them in thanks and in gratitude because she understood how important it was. And may we model that as we go into whatever. I hope you're not going to go into Thanksgiving dinner and have altercations with people or whatever, but I know there's going to be sadness around many of your tables. But can we speak the hope of the gospel into that sadness? And yeah, we can. And the question is, will we? Will we do that? Because I think that's such a what a great way to celebrate Thanksgiving. What a great way to express the outwardly what the inward change of our hearts has become through Christ. And so if you need a reminder of that, I thought, that little paper turkey. I put that out on my podcast, and you can go out there and take a look at hopeforthecaregiver.com. And it's the paper turkey that saved Thanksgiving. And you feel free to share it with others and subscribe to the podcast while you're there. We've got a lot of things out there for you, and you can get involved. Sign up for our e-letter. We send things like this out, and also you can get involved with us through what we're doing at Hope for the Caregiver. This is Peter Rosenberger. This is Truth Talk Live. We'll talk some more when we come back. Don't go away. We got more.
Truth Talk Live.
You're listening to the Truth Network and truthnetwork.com.
Welcome back to Truth Talk Live. This is Peter Rosenberger. Glad to have you with us. 866-34-TRUTH, 866-348-7884. I want to share a story with you about gratitude that stays with me, and it will for the rest of my life. When my wife gave up both of her legs back in the 90s, she had this vision for creating a prosthetic limb ministry. She's still in the hospital, and she'd been watching a documentary about Princess Diana with landmine victims in Southeast Asia, and she saw all these people that looked like her, or she now looked like. And she wanted to be able to do a prosthetic limb ministry and tell people about Jesus. And we've been doing that for 20 years over in the West African country of Ghana, and we treat patients from other places as well, Nigeria, Togo. We've treated patient in Cameroon and Kenya, but most of it is centered in Ghana. And that's the clinic where we work with. We teach and equip them how to do this. We purchase material, we send materials and supplies, and then we also recycle prosthetic limbs. We collect them from all over the country. They go to a prison run by wonderful folks at Core Civic, and this is one of their many faith-based programs, and inmates help us disassemble used prosthetic limbs so we can recycle the feet, the pylons, the knees, the screws, the adapters, all that kind of stuff. And then we send that over there along with other things that we purchase to make a custom fit leg on site. You don't recycle the limb and just give somebody a used limb. You have to make a brand new socket for them, and that's the material we said, carbon fiber and so forth. Well, in one of our first trips, there was a man, and I'll never forget him. His name was Nee Boyd, Niiboyd, and he had been very sick and lost his leg to diabetes. And his wife carried him on her back. They took a cab or their car. They got to the clinic, and he rode in on her back, and she carried him. And when we first got there, the clinic is much nicer now. It's been gone through a lot of improvements. At the time, it was in bad shape, and we started, pretty much at zero, and it was in bad shape. And they had a drainage ditch going into the patient area, and they just had some boards over there, and people had to walk. It wasn't safe at all. And this woman carried her husband on her back up these boards, and we helped him get in and so forth. And I'll never forget this. And I said, you need some help with it? No, I got him. He's my husband. I'll take care of him. So we tried to help. But anyway, we fit him for a leg. And he, when he came back a couple days later after the leg was finished, and he put on the leg, and then he went into the dressing room there, and he put on his trousers. He'd had shorts on while we were working on the leg, and he came out, and he's a very regal-looking man, just a wonderful man. And he stood there in this full-length mirror, and he looked at himself standing with two legs for the first time, and it had been a couple of years. And the look on his face was astonishing. And his kids came up, and they gathered around him, and he's reaching out, and he's holding his kids. And when his wife saw him walk around the corner, her arms just went out, and she just cried out and just rushed to meet him. And he's walking, and he's standing there with his wife. We treated a lot of patients on that trip, and at the end of the clinic day, his wife came up to me and the team, and she had a little gift bag. And she said, I wanted to be one of the ones like in the story in the Bible where the lepers were healed and only one came back to say thank you, and I wanted to be the one to say thank you. And it just ripped my heart out. I was like, it was such a privilege to be able to serve this family. And she was so humble to come back and say thank you to us. We were just giving out of what God had given to us. I mean, we're just beggars who tell another beggars where the bread is. And, Gracie and I, this is really Gracie's vision. This was everything that we do with Standing with Hope is her vision. And I'll never forget the gratitude of this woman. And all of our team, the prosthetist we had there, and this was on this particular trip, Gracie's personal prosthetist, who's an amputee himself, went with us to help train. And his name is Jim. And every one of us were just wiping our eyes. I mean, it was an extraordinary moment to see the gratitude. And then it was the next trip we went, and I took two prosthetists with me this time. And I had a guy that wrote me, it wasn't the next trip, it was the third trip after that. And I had a guy that wrote me for almost a year asking if we could put arms on his boy. We don't normally do arms. We mostly do legs. That's why it's called Standing with Hope. And the arms are a little bit more difficult, and you don't have quite the value of that you get with the prosthetic leg. With the prosthetic leg, we can get up. They're much more functional than with prosthetic arms. We don't have the functionality yet. We're getting it. I mean, you've seen the robot stuff, and this was 20 years ago. I mean, what Elon's doing and other people, it's phenomenal, biomedical stuff. But at the time, we were using hooks and cables, and but the boy didn't have any hands. They were electrocuted when he was an electrician working on the line, and both of his hands were taken off, and the power kept going out. We were racing all throughout the week to get it done, and there were some parts that didn't come in, and I got them overnighted from a wonderful group of people in a prosthetic company in Tennessee called Phil Hour, and they overnighted it, which took 3 days. And I'll never forget the DHL box on the back of a motorcycle delivered right to the clinic. We had these little intricate parts to do this. We got it done, but the power kept going out and it kept interrupting the whole process. And finally, we worked all the way till dusk. We didn't have any lights, but we had done all the things we needed to do with the power tools, but we still had to fit them to him, and there were some adjustments. We didn't have any lights, so we brought the van up right there to the front door. There was a ramp going into this clinic. We didn't have to use boards anymore, and there was a ramp that Johnny Erickson Tada's team, Wheels for the World, had built at this facility. And we had him out there, and we had him in a chair, this boy had one prosthetist on each arm, trying to get this thing done. And at the end, we got him hooked up, and I held out my hotel room card for the key for my hotel room, and he was able to reach out with the hook and grab it out of my hand and do it. And his father looked at me, and the headlights of a van, and I think we have the record of being able to put prosthetic arms on a boy in the headlights of a van in Africa. I don't think anybody else has ever done that before. And his father looked at me, tears filled his eyes, and he said, "You told me a year ago that you would do this, and you kept your word. And I want you to know how great." I mean, he just was so humble and so grateful. And we were all just bawling. I mean, it was just this kid raised, and we all sang the doxology. And this kid raised those hooks up and was praising God with those hooks in the air. It was an extraordinary moment of gratitude. And I thought, we've got so much to be grateful for. And I hope that message will stay with you, not only today and tomorrow through Thanksgiving, but forever. I hope you never forget that story. I know I won't. I was there. I watched it. It was exquisite to see this gratitude. And I remember we had a room filled with patients we were treating. They were all amputees. And they broke out in song, and they started singing. I'll go to the caregiver keyboard here. And they were singing, "It Is Well With My Soul." I want you to just imagine that for a moment. A room full of amputees in Ghana singing "It Is Well With My Soul." And they had those rich voices and they weren't singing it timidly. They weren't singing like Presbyterians. I mean, they were singing this full-throated. Sorry, I am Presbyterian. It's okay to say that. I have a dispensation for that too. Now that's funny. I don't care who you are. They were singing this full-throated. When sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. It is well with our soul. I leave that with you to take you through this weekend and more. That when we have an attitude of gratitude, when we are expressing thanks, when we see the bigger picture, it's an extraordinary thing and an extraordinary testimony. These people inspired me to no end of their commitment that God was faithful even in their distress, particularly in their distress. And he's faithful in mine and Gracie's and in yours. He changes not. His compassions, they fail not. Great is thy faithfulness. That's our prayer of gratitude. And I hope that stays with you. If you want to see more about what we do at Standing with Hope, or maybe you know somebody who has a used prosthetic limb that they don't know what to do with. They had a family member that passed away. They don't know what to do with it. We'll take it. You can go out to standingwithhope.com and send that leg. There's a little form you fill out, and you just put it in a box and mail it, and it goes to the prison, and inmates will help disassemble that so that we can give the gift that keeps on walking. It's the end of the year, and Giving Tuesday's coming up here shortly. If you've got something you want to do, if you want to sponsor a leg as a Christmas gift, the stockings are hung by the chimney with care. Well, put a leg in them. It's a gift that keeps on walking. But more than anything else, remember those two individuals, that woman who came up and said, I wanted to be the one to say thank you. That father and his son with his hooks raised to heaven singing the doxology. And then all those amputees in that room. What a great gift of gratitude. Happy Thanksgiving. This is Peter Rosenberger, peterrosenberger.com. We'll see you next time.
Another program powered by the Truth Network.